a voice of rescue with a word to rescue for your training and overcoming, entitled Trained, Not Troubled. This is message number 17 of the 300 series, His Time, Our Position. The Phillips translation of Ephesians 4 verses 31 through 32 reads, "Let there be no more resentment, no more anger or temper, no more violent self-assertiveness, no more slander, no more malicious remarks. Be kind to each other. Be understanding. Be as ready to forgive others as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you." When we are bitter, our heart has been poisoned. And so we speak out of the fullness of our heart, and we then begin to poison others when we speak. Deciding to answer back like the world instead of choosing God's response is the result of our position. When our position is in God, it produces rest, and rest produces strength, because we are operating from the higher standard of God's grace that we have gained from participating in God's power. This is what enables us to extend kindness and favor to others, even though we are facing trouble ourselves. And so our position in God is not only important in that it determines whether we become more like God when we are facing trouble. Our position in God determines what we behold. It determines what we give our focus to, and it shows the importance of our attention. That our attention plays a role and determines what it is that we see, what becomes our mirror, what then determines our experience. And this is why we are to look only to Jesus and to keep our eyes on Him, and to behold and focus our attention on God through Him, because we become more like what it is that we behold and we give our attention to. To become preoccupied with the trouble that we experience, instead of keeping our mind stayed on Jesus to experience perfect peace, not only reveals our values, what we care about most, and even worship, it causes us to bow down in distress from the weight of trying to carry it, because we bow down to what we worship. This is what leads to the resentment and the progression of our disposition from being bowed down to bitter. However, if we let it up and let it go and hand it over into God's hands in exchange for His plan, we experience rest. We become blessed instead of becoming bitter. The We translation of Hebrews 15:3, verse 15 reads, God is still saying now, today when you hear me speak, do not make your hearts hard. That is what happened when the people turned against me. Finally, our position in God is not only to come to God, but to keep our hearts soft and pliable so that we are always open to what God speaks and not stubborn to God's will, to what God wants. Because a hard heart denotes turning away and against God. And if we are not for God, we are most definitely against Him. And so we must listen to God with an open heart. If God says it, we must believe it. Why? Because God is faithful. And God, He cannot lie. And so our position is that we are God's people. That God is for us. He's not against us. And so we turn to Him. When we come to God, we're turning to Him. We turn to Him. We do not turn away from God. We do not turn against God, because God is our protection. He's our place of rest. He saves us. He helps us. We stick to Christ's example, and we go by the footsteps of Jesus Christ. Coming to God and walking to God is our commitment to follow God all the time and not some of the time. And so it is a position of humility. And so we yield to God as He pleases. We yield to God's will. We yield to God's way. We are led by God. He leads us in the way that He wants us to go. And so our position in God is that we are God dependent, not independent. We have no reliance in and of ourselves. Our position is that God is the potter. We are His clay. He shapes us how He created us to become, and we submit to that. He watches over us. This is our position in God, and our position in God, what we think about it, our level of contentment, our pleasure, our or satisfaction. This is our disposition. Our disposition is what we think about our position in God.